The snow fell heavy on 7. It was a mining colony on the edge of known space, far from any sun that could warm it. The buildings were made of metal and thick ice. The air was so cold that breath turned to fog the moment it left the mouth. Had been a combat medic for 12 years. He had seen blood of every color, red from humans, purple from, green from species he could not even name. Tonight all of it covered his hands. The shelter was small. It had been a storage room before the bombs fell. Now it was a field hospital. 3 soldiers lay on the frozen ground. Their purple blood was spreading into pools beneath them. Their breathing was weak. Their eyes were closing. There were tall beings with skin and 4 arms. They were strong fighters and proud warriors, but right now they were dying. Captain stood in the corner. She was the commander of the battalion. Her uniform was torn and burned. A cut ran across her face, but she refused treatment. She only watched the human medic work. "This one will not survive," she said, pointing to the soldier with the missing leg. "Let him go. Save your energy for the others." Did not look up. He did not stop moving. His hands worked fast, tying off blood vessels, applying clamps, injecting medicines from his kit. "No," he said simply. Blinked her large black eyes. "Human, I am telling you, I have seen wounds like this. He has lost too much blood. His heart will stop within minutes." "Then I have minutes," replied. Outside, the battle continued. Plasma fire lit up the night sky in flashes of blue and green. Explosions shook the ground. The Empire was attacking with everything they had. The colony's defenses were falling one by one. But inside the small shelter, there was only and his patience. He finished with the first soldier and moved to the second. This one had shrapnel buried deep in his chest. Metal pieces from a bomb had cut through his armor and into his body. Each breath made a wet, horrible sound. Shook her head. "His lungs are filling with blood. You cannot fix this without a proper medical facility. We are far from any hospital." Opened his wider. It was a simple box, battered and worn from years of use. But inside was everything he needed. Scalpels, thread, tubes, medicines, small machines that beeped and hummed. "I am his hospital," said. He cut into the soldier's chest with a steady hand. He found the bleeding. He stopped it. He removed the shrapnel piece by piece, dropping each bloody fragment onto the floor. He drained the blood from the lungs. He sealed the wounds. The soldier's breathing became easier. The wet sound stopped. Stepped closer. Her 4 hands were shaking. "How?" she whispered. "How are you doing this?" Was already moving to the 3rd soldier. This one had wounds all over his body. Burns, cuts, broken bones. Any one of these injuries could kill him. Together, they should have killed him already. "Because I do not accept death," said. His voice was calm, almost cold. "Death is not a fact. It is an enemy, and I fight enemies." He worked through the night. The battle outside grew louder, then quieter, then louder again. Twice, enemy soldiers came close to the shelter. Twice, went out to fight them off. She came back with new wounds each time, but still she refused treatment. "Your soldiers first," she said. "I mean my soldiers, you treat them first." Did not argue, he simply kept working. By the time the sun rose over 7, the battle was over. They had retreated. The colony had survived barely, and in the small shelter, 3 soldiers were still breathing. The one with the missing leg was stable. He would need a false leg, but he would walk again. The one with the chest wounds was sleeping peacefully. His lungs were clear. His heart was strong. The one with injuries all over his body was awake. He looked up with wonder in his black eyes. "Human," he said weakly, "you saved us." Was cleaning his tools. His hands were still covered in purple blood. It had dried into a dark crust on his skin. He looked tired, more tired than any being should look. "I did my job," he said. Walked over to him. She stood very close, looking down at this small human who had done impossible things. I have fought beside many species, she said slowly. I have seen brave warriors and skilled healers, but I have never seen anyone like you. You refused to let them die. You fought death itself. Finally looked up at her. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but there was something burning in them, something fierce. Death took my mother when I was young, he said quietly. It took my sister in the first year of this war. It tries to take everyone I care about. So now I fight back. Every patient I save is a victory. Every life I protect is revenge. He closed his and stood up. They think they understand war, he continued. They think war is about killing, but they are wrong. War is about protecting, and I will protect everyone I can for as long as I breathe. Nodded slowly. She understood now. This human was not just a medic, he was a warrior of a different kind. Far away in a command ship, an intelligence officer was reading reports from the battle. Most were normal, troop movements, casualty numbers, supply losses. But one report caught his attention. It was from a scout who had watched the human medic through the window of the shelter. The officer read it 3 times. Then he opened a new file in the computer system. He titled it, Human Medical Personnel Threat Assessment. And he began to write. The hollow moon was not a real moon. It was a giant metal ball floating in space, built by ancient beings long dead. Now it held 2 million refugees from 100 different worlds. They had come here to escape the war. They thought they would be safe. They were wrong. Park was 24 years old. She was the youngest combat medic in the human forces. She was small, barely reaching the shoulders of most soldiers. Her hair was cut short and practical. Her eyes were sharp and always watching. When they attacked the hollow moon, she was eating breakfast in the medical wing. The first explosion threw her against the wall. The second explosion brought the ceiling down. She woke up in darkness, covered in dust and broken metal. Her ears were ringing. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her head, but her hands were fine. Her hands were always fine. She found her in the rubble. She found her small pistol. She could not find her unit. The radio only gave static. She was alone. The hallways of the hollow moon were filled with chaos. People were running and screaming. Smoke poured from broken pipes. Bodies lay on the ground, some moving, some still. Did not run. She walked carefully, checking each body she passed. If they were alive, she helped them. If they were dead, she closed their eyes and moved on. She found the collapsed hospital wing after an hour of walking. The roof had fallen in, creating a cave of broken metal and wire. Inside, she could hear crying and moaning. Survivors. She crawled through a small gap in the rubble. Inside, she found 30 wounded soldiers from different species. Human, and others she did not recognize. They were lying on the floor, bleeding and broken. There was no power, no clean water, no proper equipment. The only light came from small emergency lamps that gave a weak red glow. "Is anyone a doctor?" someone called out. "I am a medic," replied. She opened her kit and went to work. The hours passed slowly. She treated burns with the last of her gel. She stopped bleeding with pressure and thread. She set broken bones with pieces of metal from the rubble. When she ran out of painkillers, she held patients' hands and talked to them until the worst pain passed. One soldier, a young male, was dying. A piece of metal had gone through his stomach. There was no way to remove it safely, not here, not with these tools. Looked at him for a long moment. Then she took out her combat knife. "This will hurt," she said. "I am sorry." She worked for 40 minutes. She used her knife as a scalpel. She used thread from her uniform to close wounds. She used her bare hands to hold organs in place while she worked. When she finished, the young was still alive. His breathing was weak but steady. Against all logic, against all odds, he would survive. Her hands were red to the elbows. Blood, human blood, her own blood from small cuts she had not noticed. She did not have time to clean them. That was when they found them. There were 6 of them. Soldiers were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes like black glass. They wore armor that made them look like insects. They carried plasma rifles that glowed with deadly light. Their leader, Commander, stepped through the gap in the rubble. He looked at the wounded soldiers on the floor. He looked at the small human woman standing among them. He smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Easy kills," he said to his soldiers. "Finish them quickly. We have other areas to clear." Stood up slowly. She was still holding her knife. Blood dripped from it onto the floor. "No," she said. Laughed. "No, little human, you are one small female with a knife. We are 6 armed soldiers. What will you do?" Did not answer with words. She moved faster than thought possible. Her knife went into the throat of the nearest soldier before anyone could react. She took his rifle as he fell and fired twice. 2 more soldiers dropped. Raised his weapon but was already too close. She hit him in the face with the rifle, breaking his nose. While he stumbled, she shot the 4th soldier. The 5th soldier fired at her. The shot burned across her arm, but she did not stop. She threw her knife. It went into his eye. The 6th soldier tried to run, shot him in the back. Then she turned too. He was on the ground, holding his broken face, looking up at her with fear in his black eyes. "What are you?" he whispered. Stood over him. Her chest was moving fast. Her arm was bleeding from the plasma burn, but her eyes were calm and cold. "I am a medic," she said. "I save lives, but I just lost 3 patients because your people bombed this place. 3 people I could not save. Do you understand what that feels like?" Shook his head slowly. "It feels like fire in my chest," continued. "It feels like failure. It feels like rage. And when I feel that rage, I need to put it somewhere." She pointed the rifle at his head. "You can live," she said. "Go back to your commanders. Tell them what happened here. Tell them what happens when you threaten a human medic's patients." Scrambled to his feet and ran. He did not look back. Watched him go. Then she dropped the rifle and returned to her patients. There was still work to do. There were still lives to save. Her hands were shaking now. The rage was fading, leaving only tiredness behind. But she kept working. That was what medics did. They kept working, no matter what. The High Command met in a room made of black stone. The walls were carved with images of past victories. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into darkness. Around a long table sat the 12 most powerful leaders of the Empire. They were worried. The war against the Galactic Coalition was not going as planned. They were stronger. They had more ships, more soldiers, more weapons, but somehow they were not winning. And the reports from the front lines were strange. Grand Admiral stood at the head of the table. He was old for his blue skin faded to almost white, but his eyes were still sharp. "We have a problem," he said. "Our soldiers are becoming afraid. Not of enemy weapons, not of enemy ships. They are afraid of human medics." The other leaders shifted in their seats. Some looked confused, some looked angry. "Medics," one of them said. "Healers. You are telling us our warriors fear healers." "Yes," replied. He pressed a button and a screen appeared in the air above the table. "I have brought someone to explain." The screen showed in a white coat. This was Dr. N, the greatest mind doctor in the Empire. He studied how different species thought and felt. "Thank you, Grand Admiral," and said. His voice was calm and academic. "I have spent 6 months studying humans. Specifically, I have studied their medical personnel. What I found is disturbing." He pressed a button and the screen showed images. Human medics working in hospitals. Human medics on battlefields. Human medics in burning buildings, in sinking ships, in the worst places imaginable. "First, you must understand how humans view death," and continued. "To us, death is natural. It is the end of life. We accept it. We honor it. When a soldier falls, we celebrate his sacrifice." He paused. "Humans do not think this way. To humans, death is not natural. It is an enemy. It is something to be fought, to be defeated, to be pushed back. Their entire medical science is based on this idea. They do not accept death. They rage against it. The screen changed to show a human medic working on a wounded soldier. The medic's face was twisted with effort. His hands moved so fast they were almost blurring. "Watch this medic," and said, "See how he works. This is not calm, this is not peaceful, this is war. He is fighting a war against death itself, and he will not surrender." Grand Admiral nodded slowly. "But why does this make them dangerous to us?" "Because of what happens when they lose," and replied. "When a loses a fellow soldier, he feels sadness, perhaps some anger, but he accepts it. When a human medic loses a patient, something different happens." The screen changed again. Now it showed a small human woman in a destroyed building. Her hands were covered in blood. Her face was empty like a mask. "This is Corporal," and said. "The footage you are about to see was taken from a helmet camera found on one of our dead soldiers." The video played. It showed a patrol moving through the building. They found bodies on the ground. Some were enemy soldiers. One was a young, barely more than a child. The soldiers laughed. One of them kicked the young's body. From behind a pile of rubble stood up. She had been trying to save the young. She had worked for an hour using every trick she knew, but his wounds were too bad. He died in her arms just minutes before they arrived. The blood on her hands was still wet. "What happened next has been removed from official records," and said, "But I will show you." The screen showed moving toward the soldiers. She was not running. She was walking slowly like a ghost. Her hands hung at her sides. The first soldier raised his weapon. Before he could fire was on him. She did something to his arm and it bent the wrong way. She took his knife from his belt and put it through his throat. The second soldier fired at her. The shot hit her leg, but she did not fall. She grabbed his rifle, turned it around, and shot him with it. The third and fourth soldiers died so fast that the camera could barely follow what happened. One moment they were standing. The next moment they were on the ground, not moving. The fifth soldier tried to run, caught him from behind. She wrapped her arms around his neck. She whispered something in his ear, then she twisted. The sixth soldier dropped his weapon and begged for mercy, looked at him with those empty eyes. "You laughed," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "He was 16 years old. I almost saved him, and you laughed." The footage ended there. The camera hit the ground and broke, and turned off the screen. The room was silent. "Was later found by Allied forces," he said. She was sitting next to the young's body, holding his hand. Her wounds were severe. She had been shot twice and stabbed once, but she did not seem to notice. He looked at each leader in turn. "This is what I am trying to explain. Human medics spend their lives learning how to save people. They know every part of the body. They know how it works. They know how it breaks. They know exactly where to press to stop bleeding." He paused. "They also know exactly where to press to cause bleeding. And when they lose someone they were trying to save, when they fail despite everything they tried." He shook his head slowly. "They become the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. They have all the knowledge of a healer and all the rage of a warrior. They have nothing left to lose, and they will make sure someone pays for their failure." Grand Admiral sat back in his chair. His old face was troubled. "What do you recommend?" he asked, and was quiet for a moment. "Run," he said finally. "If your soldiers see a human medic with blood on their hands, tell them to run." The order came down from the highest levels of command. It was sent to every ship, every base, every soldier in the Empire. It was marked with the highest priority. It was not a suggestion. It was a command. Tactical Directive 77 Omega. The message was simple. If you see a human with medical equipment and blood on their hands, retreat immediately. Do not fight. Do not talk. Do not wait. Run at least 500 meters in the opposite direction. Many soldiers did not understand. They gathered in their barracks and mess halls, reading the order on their screens, shaking their heads in confusion. "This must be a mistake," said one young soldier on a battleship far from home. "We are the Empire. We do not run from healers." His commander, an older soldier with scars on his face, looked at him with tired eyes. "You have not seen what I have seen," the commander said. "The order is correct, follow it." But not everyone listened. Some soldiers thought the order was weakness. Some thought it was a test. Some were simply too proud to run from a human, especially a human who spent their time helping others instead of fighting. Sergeant Major would teach them why the order existed. Was 43 years old. He had been a medic for 20 years. Before that, he had been a regular soldier. He knew both worlds, healing and hurting. He could save a life 1 minute and take a life the next. His unit was stationed on a small planet called 4. It was a farming world, quiet and green. The people there grew food for nearby colonies. They had no weapons, no soldiers, no way to defend themselves. When they came hard. His medical post was in a village on the edge of a great forest. He had 15 patients there. Some were soldiers injured in earlier fighting. Some were villagers who had been caught in the attack. One was a little girl who had been hurt when her house collapsed. He was treating the little girl when they arrived. There were 30 of them, a full patrol, armed with plasma rifles and wearing heavy armor. Their leader was a captain named. He was young and ambitious and eager to prove himself. Had heard about Tactical Directive 77 Omega. He thought it was foolish. He was determined to show that soldiers did not fear humans. The patrol surrounded the medical post. They broke down the doors and marched inside. They found kneeling beside the little girl, wrapping bandages around her arm. "Human medic," said loudly, "you are now our prisoner. Come with us quietly and your patients will not be harmed." Did not look up. He finished wrapping the bandage and gently patted the girl's head. "You should not be here," he said quietly. "The order tells you to retreat." Laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "The order is for cowards. I am not a coward. Now stand up and surrender." Stood up slowly. He turned to face. His hands were red with blood from the surgery he had been doing all morning. "I have 15 patients here," said. His voice was calm and steady. 3 of them will die without constant care. The girl you see behind me is 7 years old. Her name is. She lost her parents in the attack. Stepped forward. "I do not care about your patients. You will come with us now." "If you take me away, they will die," continued as if had not spoken. "Will die. Is that what you want?" Pulled out his sidearm and pointed it at the little girl. "If you do not come now, I will kill her myself. Then I will kill the rest. You can watch them all die before we take you." Something changed in his eyes. A moment before they had been soft, worried, caring. Now they became hard, like stones at the bottom of a frozen river. "I gave you a chance," he said quietly. "What?" asked. Moved, his hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. There was a cracking sound. Screamed and dropped his weapon. Before it hit the ground, had caught it and fired twice. 2 soldiers fell. The room exploded into chaos. Soldiers fired their rifles. Plasma bolts filled the air with heat and light. Patients screamed and ducked under their beds. But was not where they were shooting. He moved through the room like smoke, never staying in one place. He grabbed soldiers and put them between himself and their friends. He used their own weapons against them. He knew exactly where to hit, where to cut, where to press to make them fall and not get up. One soldier later said it was like fighting a ghost. Every time he aimed, the human was somewhere else. Every time he fired, he hit his own friends instead. The fight lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, was standing in the middle of the room, breathing hard. Blood covered his hands and arms, some his own, most not. 28 soldiers lay on the floor. 20 were dead. 8 were unconscious or too wounded to move. 2 soldiers had escaped. They ran into the forest and did not stop running until they reached their base. Captain was still alive, had been careful with him. He wanted to live. He wanted to tell others what had happened. Walked over to where lay, holding his broken wrist. He kneeled down next to the young captain. "I told you to leave," said. "The order existed for a reason, but you did not listen. You threatened my patience. You pointed a gun at a child." He leaned closer. "I am a medic. I spend my life saving people. I hate killing. It goes against everything I believe in. But there is one thing I hate more than killing." He held up his bloody hands. "I hate losing patients, and I will do anything, anything at all, to protect the people in my care." He stood up and walked back to the little girl. She was crying in her bed. He sat down next to her and held her hand. "It is okay," he said softly. "The bad people are gone. You are safe now." Behind him, Captain crawled toward the door. He would live. He would return to his people, and he would tell everyone who would listen. The order was not foolish. The order was wisdom. Never, ever threaten a human medic's patience. The war ended on a cold morning in space. Two ships, one and one human, met in the emptiness between stars. Inside, diplomats shook hands and signed papers. After 30 years of fighting, the killing was finally over. But the stories did not end. Stories never end. They grow and change and spread like seeds in the wind. 10 years after the peace treaty, the legend of human medics had become something much larger than the truth. In bars and military schools, in whispered conversations and official reports, the stories were told again and again. They said human medics could bring the dead back to life. They said human medics could kill with a touch. They said human medics never slept, never ate, never stopped working until every patient was saved. Most of these stories were exaggerated, but like all legends, they had seeds of truth inside them. Captain knew the truth better than most. She had been a combat medic for 15 years before she retired. She had saved hundreds of lives. She had seen things that still woke her up at night. Now she was 52 years old. She lived in a small house on Earth, in a village near the mountains. She spent her days gardening and reading and trying to forget. One day, a young reporter came to visit her. He was writing a book about the war. He wanted to know about the legend. He wanted to know why they had feared human medics so much. Made tea and sat with him on her porch. The mountains were purple in the evening light. Birds were singing in the trees. "Why did they fear us?" the reporter asked. "You were healers, you helped people. Why would anyone be afraid of that?" Was quiet for a long moment. She looked at her hands. They were old now, wrinkled and spotted with age, but they were still steady. They would always be steady. "Do you know what triage is?" she asked. The reporter nodded. "It is when you decide who to help first. When there are too many wounded, you choose who can be saved and who cannot." "That is the textbook definition," said. "But to a medic, triage is something different. It is the hardest thing we ever do. We look at a person and decide if they will live or die. We play God. We choose." She took a sip of her tea. "But here is the thing about human medics. We hate triage. We fight against it with every breath. When someone tells us a patient cannot be saved, we try anyway. When all hope is gone, we keep working. We never accept that death has won." The reporter was writing quickly in his notebook. "Is that why they were afraid? Because you never gave up?" "That is part of it," replied. "But there is more. You see, we spend our whole careers learning about the body. We know every bone, every muscle, every organ. We know how blood flows and how nerves send messages. We know exactly how to keep a body alive." She held up her hands. The reporter noticed scars on her fingers, pale lines crossing her palms. "That same knowledge works both ways. If you know how to stop bleeding, you know how to cause bleeding. If you know how to ease pain, you know how to cause pain. We know exactly how fragile a body really is. We know the fastest ways to make it stop working." She smiled, but there was no happiness in it. Most of the time, we use this knowledge to help people, but sometimes in war, we use it the other way. And when we do, we are very, very effective." The reporter swallowed hard. But why? Why would a healer become a killer? Looked out at the mountains. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. "Have you ever lost someone you were trying to save?" she asked quietly. "Have you ever felt a heart stop under your hands? Have you ever watched the light leave someone's eyes while you did everything possible to keep them alive?" The reporter shook his head. "It is the worst feeling in the world," continued. "It is failure, it is guilt, it is rage, all mixed together into something dark and terrible. And when you feel that feeling and then you see the people who caused it, the people who hurt your patient, who killed the person you were trying to save." She turned to look at the reporter. Her old eyes were sharp and hard. "You want to make them understand. You want them to feel what you feel. You want them to know what they have done. And you have all the knowledge, all the skill, all the training to do exactly that." The reporter was silent for a long moment. "They figured this out," he finally said. "That is why they made the order. That is why they ran." "Yes," nodded. "They learned that a medic with blood on their hands, a medic who just lost a patient, a medic who is standing in the middle of their failure, that is the most dangerous being in the universe, because they have nothing left to lose. The worst has already happened, and they are looking for someone to pay for it." She stood up slowly and walked to the edge of her porch. The first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. "In schools now, they teach children about human medics," she said. "They show them pictures. They tell them what to do if they ever see one." "What do they tell them?" the reporter asked. Laughed softly. It was a sad sound, tired and old. "They tell them to run," she said. "They tell them that human medics are not angry because they want to hurt anyone. They are angry because they could not save someone, and that kind of anger is much, much worse." She looked down at her hands one last time. Even after all these years, even after all the washing and scrubbing, she sometimes thought she could still see the stains. "We carry life and death in these hands," she said quietly. "We spend our whole lives fighting for one and against the other. Most people never understand what that means, what it costs, what it makes us." She turned back to the reporter. "They understood. That is why they ran, and if they were smart, they will keep running forever." The reporter left an hour later, his notebook full of words. He would write his book. He would tell the story. And in schools across the galaxy, in military academies and hospitals and quiet homes people would read it and understand. Human medics were not just healers. They were warriors of a different kind. And you never, ever wanted to see one with blood still on their hands.